The clink of silverware echoed through the lavish restaurant, laughter bubbling from a table of well-dressed executives. They weren't laughing because of a joke. They were laughing at him. Ethan, a humble waiter, stood still, gripping the tray so tightly his knuckles turned white. The smirks, the whispered insults, the cruel trick they had just played on him, it burned deep. They thought they'd humiliated him for good. What they didn't know was that Ethan had been quietly preparing a dish they'd never forget, and this one would be served ice cold. Ethan had been working at La Belle Maison for 7 years. He wasn't just good at his job, he was meticulous, polite, and attentive. But to some customers, he was invisible. And to others, he was an easy target. One evening, a table of 4 powerful businessmen walked in. They were regulars, but not the good kind. They treated staff like disposable tools, snapping fingers, making insulting jokes, and never tipping. Among them was Gregory Hale, a corporate shark whose company had been in the news for ruthless layoffs. Ethan knew him, not personally, but from the time Gregory's company had shut down his father's small supply business. His father never recovered from the loss. That night, Gregory was in a particularly cruel mood. "Hey, waiter," Gregory called, not even glancing up. "We'll start with a bottle of your most expensive wine. And be quick. You do know how to open one, right?" His friends chuckled. Ethan kept his voice calm. "Of course, sir." But when he returned with the wine, Gregory decided to take things further. "You look nervous. Let's see if you can carry this without shaking." He reached into the ice bucket, pulled out a handful of water, and flicked it toward Ethan's shirt. The table erupted in laughter. Ethan froze for a split second, every muscle in his body tensing. Years of customer service training told him to smile and move on. But deep inside, something shifted. This wasn't just about rudeness, this was about respect. And Gregory had crossed the line. As the night went on, Ethan overheard their conversations. They bragged about backroom deals, ruining competitors, and avoiding taxes. But one detail caught Ethan's attention. They were meeting here again tomorrow night for a private celebration with important guests. By the time Ethan clocked out, a plan had begun to form. The next evening, Ethan arrived early. He had convinced the manager to let him handle the VIP room service. Gregory's party arrived right on time, arrogant as ever. Ethan welcomed them with a warm smile. "Gentlemen, I've prepared something special for tonight, a tasting menu, on the house." They agreed, smugly assuming it was an act of apology for the previous night. But Ethan's special was more than food. Over the years, he'd befriended a few investigative journalists who loved a good story about corporate corruption. One quick phone call that morning had set things in motion. As the men enjoyed their first course, Ethan discreetly placed a tiny wireless mic under the table, disguised as a dropped pen. Every word they spoke, every brag about illegal deals, every slip about hidden accounts, was being recorded. He served each dish with precision, all the while guiding their conversation with harmless-sounding questions. "That must have been quite the deal you closed last month, sir. How did you manage to pull it off so quietly?" They couldn't help themselves. Their egos demanded an audience. By dessert, they had practically confessed to enough crimes to keep a prosecutor busy for years. Ethan excused himself for one last wine pairing, but instead slipped into the alley behind the restaurant where a black van was parked. Inside were two journalists, already wearing headphones and grinning. "This is gold," one whispered. Within hours, clips of the conversation were uploaded anonymously. By morning, every major news outlet was replaying Gregory's voice boasting about insider trading and bribery. The fallout was immediate. Police raided Gregory's office. His company's stock crashed. His friends distanced themselves. And that smug table of four. They became the most hated men in the city overnight. At the restaurant, staff whispered in the kitchen when Ethan walked in. The manager, who had always valued Ethan's loyalty, simply gave him a knowing nod. A week later, Ethan received an unmarked envelope in the mail. Inside was a simple note: "Justice tastes best when served cold. Well done." Alongside it was a generous check from the Journalists Network, a thank you for the exclusive story. Ethan didn't spend it on luxury. He reopened his father's old shop, restored it to its former glory, and hired staff who had once been laid off unfairly by Gregory's company. And as for Gregory, he never stepped foot in La Belle Maison again. Closing line. Sometimes, revenge isn't loud. It's served quietly, plated with patience, and savored long after the meal is over.